Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome all of you to Kingdom Matters, our part 2 discussion on the church and politics. And tonight with us to help in this discussion, we have from my immediate left, which is your right, the Most Reverend Dr. Richard Anyagbede, the presiding Bishop of Adonai International Ministries. And next to him, we have Bishop Dr. Fafali Seli, the founder and senior pastor of Petra International Church. So you are most welcome.
Thank you.
And then, last but not the least, is a brother and a friend, Apostle Dr. Emmanuel Apieni, the founder and senior pastor of Word Life Churches. Ministers of the Gospel, you are most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Why should the politician frown on the church? Since we are all involved in nation building, the church is involved in nation building, the politician as well is involved in nation building. And why should the politician, for that matter, then frown on the church so much? Dr. Seli.
Very interesting question. And I would say, if the politician see himself to be part of the church, because majority of the politicians out there are affiliated to one church or the other. So if you are affiliated to a church, let's say for instance, let's take Adonai International Ministries or Word Life Church, and then members from these two churches get out there and become a politician. What makes you now to turn around to be against the church? It is because when you got in there, you were not able to influence the system and probably bring a change, or to be outstanding or being looked at as a very exclusive person. When you get in there, you join the system. It's okay, this is how it is done. So we need to just do it. You see, so the politician actually regarding himself as a Christian, not supposed to front out the church. Because the church is there from day one. It was the church that raised you up. So if the church raised you up, what makes you to think that now you are better than the church? The moment somebody gets to that stage, it simply means that the person is becoming rebellious. And anybody who rebels against God, you rebel against the church, you are rebelling against God. And anybody who rebels against the church or rebels against God, have his own way. There's a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof, leads you to destruction. So the fact that the church is playing its role and making the effort to put the politicians on the right track it shouldn't give a cause of alarm for the politician to look at the church as an enemy. No, we are not enemies. The church is not enemy. There is no church that should be tagged as an enemy. But the church, I believe that the church is there to make sure that the right is done, and the politician does the right thing, deliver on your promises, what you're supposed to be doing to make lives better for the citizens. That's what you're supposed to be doing. So you don't go in there and see the honeycomb and then you try to lick the honey alone. So that's what is the problem. So they see the honeycomb, they forget about all their Sunday school teachings. Thou shalt not steal. The commandments playing here. Thou shalt not bear false witness and all that. Thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife. You see? So they forget about all these fundamental teachings, get in there, they see the honeycomb, and their concentration is just the honeycomb, and they want to lick the honey. So if the church is coming in to tell you, no, you're doing the wrong thing, then they tag you as being an opponent or being an enemy.
I want us to stay here a little.
Yes.
Okay. How do politicians view the church and why?
how they view the church.
Yes. Maybe I'll come to Doc and then come back and then I'll pick
Well,
your
I realized that we as a church and we as politicians would have to redefine our placement and our identity so well. Because I know that from our perspective as church, anybody that comes up as a pastor, a bishop, or a church worker is expected by everybody in society to have some kind of standards and high morals. And fortunately or unfortunately, just as in every human society, we see bad nuts. There have also been bad nuts that have crept into the church. So-called ministers, so-called pastors, so-called prophets, and what have you, who in the quest of trying to do church have also skipped it and deviated and gone off, that their behavior and activity is below the belt. And the politician thinks that because we are in the same boat of seeking nation building or the welfare of a nation, they can correct us at any given time when the pastors and church leaders do anything that is not appropriate in terms of morality or every other thing that does not enhance national interest or nation building. But the interesting thing is this: the politician wants to correct the errors and the evils of the church. But when we also say that you cannot condemn and put everybody that claims to be a minister of the gospel into one box or one basket and say that every pastor is corrupt, because it is not so. Just as we can also not say that all politicians are dirty, all politicians are corrupt. But I believe that the time has come that we must have this dialogue to clearly define who a politician is and why a politician, and who the church is and why the church. And if fundamentally we are able to clarify that we are all in here for the same business, the welfare of our people, improving godly systems and establishing the counsel of God, morality, because the church must promote morality, values, virtues. The politician must also promote the same. Because when these two things are out, discipline, orderliness, and respect for every level of authority, if these things are out, whether you're a politician or you are a church person, or if we don't live by our core values, we will not be able to develop our country, we will not be able to build and develop our nation, we will not be able to build our people. So it's one thing that I believe that every politician and every person, whether connected to church or politics or governance of a nation, should rethink about what exactly is our role. Why are we in here for? If that is clearly understood, it will guard us from all the activities we engage in. Because we must be a watch on one another, and we must be able to correct one another, not with vengeance as a drive or defamation, but to see it as a way of life that would help us to coexist peacefully for the sake of the advancement and the building of our nation and our people. Because the politician cannot build the nation alone without the church. The church also cannot develop the people spiritually without the physical or the secular aspect of society. Because if you study the aims and principles of education, certain things were put in the curricula of education in terms of courses and subjects, which at the end of the day, once you are training the mind with skill, you are also putting in discipline, character, and core values that go with it. So at the end of the day, so I remember when we were in school in those days, we used to do BK, Bible knowledge. Then it came to RK, religious knowledge. Now it's religious studies. And why were those things put into the aims of and the principle of education? And why were those things introduced into our curricula? So that our value systems can be developed, discipline, godly character, morality can be improved. So wherever you are, you do not destroy or live disorderly. Wherever you are, whether a teacher, a laborer, a worker, whichever role or whichever place you find yourself in the supply chain, the core values of discipline, character, good behavior, being so conscious of having the nation at heart as a patriotic citizen. These things are the things that we are exposed to so that we can be able to live aright. But it's so unfortunate that as we go along, then the quest for money and materialism takes the place of all these things that now we frown on the very things that we were exposed to guard and help us. Or even those things that had brought us this far, we now reject them. And this is where we have had the clashes.
Professor, any view? How does the politician view the church and why?
I think, like Doc said, I think the recent past, there have been some new conceptions regarding what has gone on in the ministry. And unfortunately, let me say this, it's amazing why everybody feels he can tell the church what to do. It's amazing why everybody feels that he can sit in his home and determine how church should be run. There are some people that even want to give them 10 people to handle in 3 weeks. They can't. Now, it's very sad to realize that some few ministers, let me put it that way because that's what they claim to be, who have come to bring so much pain to the work of the ministry, seems to derail all the efforts that have been done over the years, to the extent that the core values or the core reason why they are doing ministry is to make people just rich and prosper, no matter what they do. This thing has created an impression that the church has deviated. Sadly, it is these very few who also trumpet very loud on our social media, on our radio, and on our television. In other words, they seem to be the people or the mouthpiece of the whole church. Very sad. And it is because society itself, something has gone wrong with it. I get very surprised when people feel that the church is somewhere else. If a country cannot censor what comes on our television and anything goes, anybody can say anything on radio and turns around to blame the church for it, then there's a problem somewhere. So I think the key thing is that, like Doc said, we need to begin to revalue, assess ourselves and say, where are we now? And where are we going? And what must be done? So to put it straight, I would say that the church as it is now is intact. But like they say, a few bad nuts in your mouth can make you throw everything out. And I think that instead of us putting so much emphasis on the negatives, I think it is time as a people, as a country, begin to speak about the positives so that those who are negatively involved in things can aspire to do what is right. You listen to our radio, everything is negative from morning to evening. We can't say, even when there's a development in this country, no radio station spends time to talk about it. when a church does something for a people, nobody will talk about. But let one bad thing happen. Of course, the media will say they are there, their bad news sells. And that is what has made our society be so. But unfortunately, we are called, and fortunately, we speak the good news. And I hope that as a country, if we want to see good, we will turn to the church to speak the good news, to lift our people up, and to make us a better people. Because what you hear is what you become.
Thank you so much. Dr. Fafali, has the church really lived up to her expectation?
Oh, yes. Yes, the church has lived up to its expectation. Despite the fact that we have one or two bad nuts, that have made up the church. I'm talking about fake preachers that have infiltrated into the rank. By and large, I think the church has lived up to expectation. In our previous discussions, we look at even the role that the church has played. Apostle Doctor made a submission of our schools, our hospitals, so many orphanages. The majority of those schools and hospitals and orphanages are built by the churches. Yeah, the mainstream line churches. Thank God that the Pentecostal and the charismatic churches are coming on board now to contribute their quota to providing those social amenities. So when we're looking at the church, if it's living up to its expectation, I'll say yes. I'm not considering what the bad ones are doing. Yes, in every society we are bad and good. We are bad people, we are good people. And when we come to the church, I believe that the bad ones may outnumber the good ones, but the little few or the few good pastors or churches that are existing, they are actually delivering on their mandate.
That's right.
They are delivering on their mandate. And we will not relent from doing what we are called to do. So in my submission, yes, the church is effectively playing its role. So the politicians should just accept the church. Yeah, they should just accept the church. Because you see, even when you take governance from the old Bible days, you realize that to every nation, or let's say to the people of Israel, anytime God gives them a king, he attached to the king a prophet.
That's right.
Now the prophet is not to seek his interest, but the prophet is there to be a guide, to serve as a guide to the king, so that when the king is going wayward, the prophet can, bring him back, and then the prophet also is to hear from God, thus saith the Lord, and deliver just exactly without adding to it to the king. And it looks like in those days it really works. The only area that we saw differences was between the governors of King Saul and then the prophet Samuel, where King Saul will not submit and listen to the prophet. So this is where the problem comes in. When the politician will not want to listen to the prophet. With the prophet, I'm not talking about those who are prophetizing.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about through servants of God that are called and sent out there to the nation. So if the politician will listen to those prophets, to the pastors, to the preachers, I believe strongly that things will go the right way. And also, Mr. Moderator, we should also not forget about the fact that, you see, the previous question you asked, how the politician view the church or look at the church. we should also not forget that the politicians out there, they also have relatives. They are relatives who are pastors or relatives who are leaders in churches. So, and they live with them. They do everything with them. So if they realize that the leader of a particular church, who happen to be his relation, is not living right, the moral standard, as my senior man have put it earlier, then that is where the politician will now be saying that, but you yourself, you are not right. You are not on the right track. What moral right do you have to come and correct me or check me and all that? But when we take in totality, the church hasn't failed at all. The church is on its course. And we want to encourage the church to be on its course and pursue its mandate.
Okay, I've got any view.
Well, I always have had this view that we are in it together. When it comes to nation building, the church has a prophetic role. It's unfortunate that some have overstepped the role as a prophet. But I believe that we still have genuine, true prophets of God or ministers of the gospel in the land. That should politicians at any given time need the counsel of the Lord to know what to do or to how to handle issues, they must be able to consult. And I don't think that it is wrong in any way. It's rather unfortunate that sometimes it is like the church or the leadership of the church is rubbished, because some few people are looked at and they think that all of us in the church are riffraffs, dropouts. I remember one time I had a very respectful man saying that if somebody is frustrated in life and becomes a dropout, the easiest way he thinks he can make money is to become a pastor. My bowels turned within me. In the same vein, it's unfortunate. We have doctors, we have medical doctors, we have all other folks of various disciplines who are so crooked, have taken undue advantage of the pelvics of innocent women. But nobody seems to. It's unfortunate that many people in our country have lost their lives just for the mere simple mistakes that certain medical doctors have done. They would have lived and not died. Nobody frowns on that. It's always kept in secret and covered. Many evil things go on against our people. I'm saying this not that anything any pastor does and is wrong should not be found. We must be a check on one another. But I believe that many of us, and for those of us here, we have gone to school. We are well educated. We are well informed. We understand what it means to help and offer what can bring this nation to its best. But you see, sometimes I sit back and I realize that certain people who seem to be so vocal have taken the forefront. And therefore, those with the counsel of Jehovah, with discipline and order, are being ignored. And we sit and we see things go the way they do. It is for this reason that we are doing this discussion, to also put out there our little quota that can help synthesize our people so well and begin to realize that there are yet 7,000 prophets who have not yet bowed down to Baal, nor kissed Baal. That if our politicians would seek, and it's either they know and they are ignoring, or they are refusing to realize that there are still true prophets of God, true men of God, and women of God in this land that have their interests at heart. We are praying for them. We are seeking God's counsel for them. We are doing everything to make sure that it is well with them. Because if it goes well with Ghana, we are also in it, and it's well with us. If it goes off, we suffer it. So I believe that the time has come that a platform must be created that we can look at some of these things and see how best we can help one another for the sake of Mother Ghana.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are still with us on Kingdom Matters, and our topic for discussion is the church and politics. As we get ready to run up this discussion, I want to ask Dr. Pieni, what are some of the major ways that the church can enhance governance and nation building?
I think that's a very, very important question based on what we are discussing now. I think Doc just said, Doc also mentioning that right from the cradle, when we are born, the basis for bringing up people start from the church.
Yeah.
And that is why I keep on saying that all the best schools in our country are mission schools.
Mm-hmm.
The data is clear for everyone to see. And so in our submission, what we are saying is that, and like Doc said, either those in governance see it and intentionally has ignored it, or they know it and for certain reasons don't want to stand out for it. Because some schools that were done over 100 years ago are still the best. Whereas we have schools that have been built recently and are the worst. So in the church's role in building and helping to govern, I believe that the church's doctrine is people. And all that it does is a best place to use as a basis in governing a people. If you look at what the scripture says, like what Jesus said, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, and then love thy neighbor as thyself. I mean, this virtue cuts across. Now, let me say this. How do you pocket the money for a road if you love the people? I mean, if you really love your fellow human being, there are certain things you can never be able to take away from him.
Sure.
And so and one thing I think is that we have reduced the church only to a spiritual thing. The church is the only organization, let me say it, that takes care of the spirit, the soul, and the body of the human. There are times somebody is sick at the hospital, the doctor says, well, we have finished our work. There's nothing to do. Can you call your pastor?
That's right.
There are cases that when people are taken from hospital, it is this same church people who even have to contribute to take care. And let me say this. One day, one politician looked into my face and said, well, the church is a problem to this country. And that the church are taking people's money. And the church is not contributing to society. I looked straight to his face and said, well, I've been told that you have been giving $1 million. What have you used it for? He was watching, looking into my face and said, nobody has given me any money. But let me tell you something. You get up there and make so much noise. There are pastors who are paying school fees. There are pastors who are taking care of widows. There are pastors who are contributing to community well with all their church members. And I said, because we lack data in this country, in other developed countries, indeed, this would have been some tax returns for the things that we do, for taking care of orphans, widows, and some of the philanthropic work the church does. But our calling, we don't trumpet it on the radio.
That's right.
We don't give things like the politician does and comes to say that they have done this. We don't do that. So really, look at the things the church has been able to do just with these little funds. We build schools, we build hospitals, we do so much with the little that we have. So I believe that there is so much that the politician can learn from the church. And indeed, they came from the church to do politics. We have been wondering why when they get there, they cannot at least pick some of the things that they learn from church to the place and say, well, this thing worked here with our little funds, and we feel that we can contribute. So in terms of what we teach, our values, our way of life, and the structures even the church has put in place, there's so much to learn to help in the governance of this country, even if you don't want to accept it. The facts speak for itself. And I think that we not be in variance with each other, we can learn from each other, pick from each other, and make our nation and our society a better place for us all.
Apostle, thank you so much. Dr. Papal, I don't know whether you have anything to add on this issue of the major ways that a church can enhance governance and nation building.
The church is to continue teaching and raising leaders and building up that strong moral character in the people. So when they get out there, they can affect society. They can affect the bad ones. They can cause a change, regardless of your affiliation to your party. The system can be there, but when you get out of the church and then you join the system, let the system know that you are different. A man of God, a preacher, became a vice president. Beside the two examples I gave, Tanzania and Malawi, I think this is Zambia. One time, one of their vice presidents happened to be a charismatic preacher. Yeah. And he said, when he got into office, he told himself that for the first 100 days, he was going to seal every loophole to corruption. But to his amazement, his own party members walked to his office and said, well, we want you to understand that we've been here before you came. So either you join us or you backtrack. So that was a preacher, somebody from the church who got into the system and want to initiate something good. So for the church to enhance proper governance is just simple. Church, continue teaching. Continue raising the leaders. Continue teaching them the right thing. Building strong moral characters. So that when the people go, then they will see the difference. They will see the difference. A man of God recently, I'm not going to mention his name, but decided to become vocal, to touch on certain elements, evil deeds of the politicians and all that. And it's amazing to hear the kind of attacks that he's receiving. But he said, whatever you do, that will not stop me from keeping quiet. That is it. So what can the church do to enhance proper governance? Keep on speaking the truth. Keep on teaching. Keep on preaching. Keep on being the guide. Keep on being the eye of the king. And on and on and on. And I believe one day with prayer, we shouldn't forget about prayer though. Yeah, because prayer changes things. So we don't only teach or correct people, we must add prayer to it. So the more we also pray to the people, pray for them. Of course, the Bible admonishes us for us to pray for men in authority. So prayer is also one key aspect that will encourage the church not to relent on. We should keep on praying and believing God that one day our society will become better.
Any thought before I put out my final question?
I also think that the church must not stop in a very polite but firm and strong way, speak against those things that go on in society that is not helping us. Because sometimes it looks like the politician would want to intimidate the church, and for that matter, the minister who comes up to speak against anything going on which will not help the nation. I also believe that the views of the church should be reconsidered, and that when any minister of the gospel presents a concern, it should not be listened to with a partisan ear. Otherwise, we may miss the good counsel or the good point that is coming from. Yeah. Because the best of it all is for a minister of the gospel to take a middle way, not to be partisan, so he can be able to be the servant of the Lord as a watchman, give God's counsel when it has to be. And I believe also that it is time for the politician not to frown on any correction or anything that the church, or any word that comes from the angle of the church. To them, it is not because we are against them or it's because we want to play them down, but it's because we want to offer that which, if they listen to it in good faith, would go a long way to help our church. And I also believe that one of the things that would help us as a church from the end of the politicians is that matters that has to do with the church, they should please hand it over to the church to deal with. Because when any minister of the gospel, in quote, is seen doing wrong things, if the politician has the expertise to deal with it, fine. But if not, the church can cleanse itself, because we have structures in place to be able to deal with any matters that would play down the credibility of the church. If this can be done, because I've heard over the years, even in revolution days and times, the church has failed, the church has failed. And sometimes those connotations misrepresent all the good the church has done. But I personally believe, as my brothers and we've all been discussing through, that the nation cannot do without the church, and the church cannot do without the nation, because we are in it together. And therefore, let us respect one another and give each other the due benevolence. And I trust that with an open heart, with an open mind, and with Ghana and our countries as the focus, we will do well.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Anyagbede. This will be my final question, then I'll pick each of you your quick thoughts on it, and then we would draw the curtain for tonight's discussion. My question is, the politician cannot do without the church in the governance or nation building. True or false? If it is true, what is your view? If it is false, what is your view? I may start with Dr. Selly.
Well, yes, it is true that the politician cannot do away with the church. Likewise, also the church can also not do away with the politician.
Sure.
I think we need to be very truthful to ourselves here. So we don't just toe one line, thinking that it's the politician that is corrupt and the church is not. So as much as the church is there to serve as a guide to the politician, I think the politician also is also there to also check some of the immoral activities of some of our churches. So if we want to look at the two aspects, we should be one another's keepers. Because the truth is, yes, as much as we have corrupt politicians, we also have some corrupt preachers or church leaders. Yes, we do. For instance, if the politicians who are there are really true Christians and invested themselves into the Word of God, they will know that there are certain activities of some churches that are not right.
Sure.
that are not biblical.
That's right.
So that gives them the authority to come into that church and put things right. It is wrong to sell miracle items in churches. But if the politicians who is there doesn't know the scriptures, wouldn't know that is wrong. So if the politicians out there who is a Christian and have the scriptures in him and fear God, and then look at a particular church where merchandise activities is going on, they will walk in there and put things right. So the church serving as a guide or criticizing the government or the politicians, we should also be ready for the politician also to come in and do certain corrections. We are not saying that they should dictate to us what we should know, we should do. But what we are saying that we should be able to open our doors for them to come in and check our books sometimes. I know it's a subject that other fellow preachers out there or church leaders will not agree with me. But when we go to the Western world, that is what is there. The politicians have the authority to come into the church and to check the books of the church. I happen to be in a French church in New York when auditors walk into the church and they are to audit the books. It was not easy. Then I realized that, excuse me to say, those of us who find ourselves in Africa or whatever, we really not. So maybe not to go too much into details. I will just stay where where I began from. That we need each other. Yeah, we need each other. The politicians need the church, and the church need the politicians. Once we agree to that, I think there'll be harmony. Yeah, there'll be harmony. They will have an equal, play field, and then we move the nation forward.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thanks. Any view the politician cannot do without the church in governance and nation building? If it is true, why? If it is false, please why?
Very true. We eat the same food. We use everything together. So really, as it is, we buy the same thing. So if we are passing one with another or walking down the streets, you can't even know whether this is a priest, unless you have put on your priesthood or you are in a function. So on daily basis, we are interwoven with each other, and we cannot do I think what we need is self-respect or mutual respect for each other. That we as a church must respect the politicians as playing a role that helps to build our nation. And the politicians also realizing that the church is also playing a key role. I think along the line, there has been suspicion against one another. And like Doc said, we need to redefine and start thinking, what roles are we playing to complement each other? And from what Doc said, in a way it's true, but various governments have instruments for which religious bodies are set up. In some countries, they are charities. And even they give them some funds and all that. So in that case, it might be right. In our setting, I think from our cultural values, from the registration of our churches, and the fact that we also have church bodies, like the Christian Council, Catholic bishops, Pentecostal and Charismatic churches. These are supervisory bodies that are supposed to help to check what is going on within the churches. If in our democracy, which is just about 30 years, if we don't put structures in place, just to compliment what the doctor says, and just says, oh, because something is happening somewhere, we have not developed to a point where people come in with that kind of mindset that they are doing it for the whole good of the nation. Some may not just like him, target him, walk straight to him, and just begin to cause a mess all over the place. So, but this also sends a signal to us as ministers that in our dealings, in our finances, whatever that we do, we ourselves should have a check on ourselves. And I agree with him. So that we don't even need, from where we stand as the salt and the light of the world, we don't even need a politician to come to your church or a institution to come and tell you, as a minister who is a light of the world, to put your house
Sure.
in order.
Absolutely.
And like he said, if we want to also be able to speak to them, then we must first take the log in our eyes before we
For
can
sure.
take the beam in someone's.
Exactly.
So I think this is where I feel that mutual respect is in. I got to respect those for the governance, and they also have to respect us as those that God has put in place to put things in order
Thank you.
for the sake of the nation.
Professor Penny, thank you so much. And then finally, maybe in the next 2 minutes, I want to pick.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. I think that a lot has been absolutely well said. My prayer is that the church and the politician would appreciate their God-given roles and play it so well so that our country, or our countries for that matter, would become what God meant it to be. Because definitely the church cannot do without the politician, and the politician cannot do without the church. It's like the hen and the egg. The egg cannot do without the hen, and the hen cannot do without the egg. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It has been wonderful discussing this very important topic, the church and politics. I want to say a big thank you to Most Reverend Dr. Richard Anyagbede for being part of this discussion.
Thank you.
I also want to say a big thank you to Bishop Dr. Fafali Seli for also making time to be part of this discussion. And then finally to Apostle Dr. Emmanuel Apieni. Thank you so much for being part of this discussion. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to say a big thank you to each one of you for making time to be part of Kingdom Matters. Till we come your way again, have a wonderful night. And God bless each one of you. Bye for now.